You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. Put down $1 on any NFL game for new customers, and guess what? You get $100 in free plays if either team scores. That's how cool it is. That's what we're talking about right here. Joined by Anthony Gimino, I'm Mike Luke. All right, on assignment here, we got a lot of people rushing in and out, as you can see, trying to get down to the post-game stadium. But Anthony, 38-15. And, honestly, this just felt like a team in ASU that once they got their footing, they were just better than Arizona was out there. I think it was pretty much that simple.
They were better, but the result could have been a little bit different. Sorry, you kind of had to drive all the way up there just to see the same script you've seen 7, 8, 9 times for the rest of the season. Competitive but inefficient. Competitive but turnover prone. Competitive but really stupid with penalties. That's an Arizona season, and that was Arizona's game against ASU. I mean, if I had told you, Mike, they were going to outgain ASU 396 to 314 and hold Jaden Daniels to 86 yards passing,
right?
You might have thought Arizona would be winning this game. But
if I were to tell, go ahead.
Yeah, they gave away 14 points.
And if I were to tell you,
he gave away 14 points.
Right, and if I were to tell you, too, that Will Plummer would throw for 350 yards, you're thinking to yourself, okay, the Cats have a real chance here. But what you saw, too, was, like you said, it's just kind of a rehashing of everything that Arizona fans have seen this entire season, in that, yes, you threw for a lot of yards. It looked okay. But you know what? When the chips were really down, Arizona just wasn't able to make plays that it needed to make. And, quite frankly, there was a guy in the media from ASU that was sitting next to me, and he said, if you look at the scoreboard right here, it was you could make the case that it was Arizona or Will Plummer 15 or 14, ASU 15. I mean, that's just kind of the feeling that you had. This was a team that I think did enough to keep it competitive, but like you said, even against a team like ASU, where there's so many errors that occur for the Sun Devils, Arizona still comes out of that looking just meh.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this game, after last season and what happened with 70-7, ASU was going to be content to win this game close.
Right.
They just wanted to run the ball. They wanted to stack the box on defense, play press coverage, and let Will Plummer try to beat them.
Mm-hmm.
He got the yards, but Will Plummer made Will Plummer mistakes. He gave up 2 turnovers that handed ASU what they were looking for. That
right.
Key plays that led directly to points. And Arizona made more plays than it usually does in the longer passing game.
Right.
But still nothing that changed the game.
Right.
And you talked about that. There was, just like almost all season, there were no super game-changing plays, offensively or defensively.
Right. And I think going into the year, I just wanted to have an idea of who the quarterback was going to, if the quarterback was on this roster. And I was all for, after a couple games, I saw enough from Gunnar Cruz to say that, that's not really the guy. That's not the guy that you're going to win games with. I wanted to see what you had out of Will Plummer. Will Plummer, to me at this point, and this is no, indictment on the kid, but Will Plummer is a career backup type. You know what? He's a guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's kind of, we talked about it before, he's kind of the Brady Batten guy that you have, always kind of waiting in the bullpen, but you don't want to really go into the game with Will Plummer as your QB or go into a season with Will Plummer as your QB, because there's just too many mistakes that occur throughout the period of a game. And look at it. Well, yeah, I mean, you just look at it this game. You had the fumble, which basically led to 7 points. And then you had the pick 6, which led. Those are 2 plays that you just can't make under any circumstance whatsoever.
Yeah, not in a game like this. And we've seen, I think I'd be comfortable if he was the backup or the third string guy and he had to step into a game in an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe he had to start for a week or 2.
Right.
You can manage that, and he showed some good things that he's likely to improve.
Mm-hmm.
But, he's not going to be your starting quarterback.
Right, for sure. I think that we've seen enough from that. So you know what? If you come out of this season with one thing you know that quarterback probably isn't on the roster right now as we are. I mean, he might be with Jordan McLeod, but
what did we really see? We saw 6 quarters.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why when people are banking on it saying, well, we got Jordan McLeod ready to rock and roll next season. Well, he would be in the competition for me. But at the same time, this isn't a guy that I'm looking at and I'm saying to myself, he's 100% going to be the starter, because you're kind of limiting yourself at that at that point. Okay, now, as always, this is brought to you by DraftKings, coming to you live on remote. Here's the great deal you got going on right now. If you put down, basically, for a new customer, if you put down, let's see, $1 on any team to score, you can win $100 in free plays. It's really that simple. I know it sounds a little too good to be true. It's true. You know what? I've utilized it. Anthony's utilized it. We can all sit here and say that that's really been the case. Now, you need to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, and then basically you're ready to rock and roll then. Now, if you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Arizona only, 21 and up. New customers only. Eligibility restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Anthony, let me ask you this: going into the game, I thought that the line of 20.5 was. I thought Arizona would cover that. But you know what? I mean, and if Arizona didn't do Arizona things, they probably do cover that. And I think that's kind of the highlight of what we're talking about here with the U of A.
Yeah, I can't say I was backing the A today, Mike.
Anthony, that should be a way of life. You shouldn't have to put it there.
But I wasn't not backing the A. I just chose to ignore it.
Mm-hmm. You ignored the A.
I ignored the A.
And you think that's okay?
Well, yeah, from a betting point of view, yeah, I think that was a really good decision.
It was a good decision. Now, let's talk about going forward here. A lot of people are saying, Don Brown, he takes the UMass job. First and foremost, I wanted to ask you, because you're a national writer, obviously, for Lindy's, and you've been in the know for quite a while. I was, the last couple games weren't great, obviously, but I loved what I saw from Don Brown this season for the most part. I think that he's going to be a big loss, and I think they're going to have to really comb everywhere to try to find somebody that can adequately replace him.
Well, I'm sure you've probably heard as many good names as I have as potential replacements. Mm-hmm. I think he did some good things. They for the last 3-4 years, Arizona has been in that like 110 to 125 range nationally in defense. This year, at least they're more in the 60 to 70 range. Again, they did a pretty good job defensively on ASU today, although a few yards. I think Jed, with his connections, I think he'll be able to find someone. I think there's a lot of good coaches candidates out there, probably some we've never even heard of before. Mm-hmm. But he may have also, Don Brown whoever they bring in is going to have to put his own stamp and style on it. But I think Don Brown kind of instilled just the baseline, foundational way to play. And they played harder and tougher than we've seen since really like the Scooby years. So if they just maintain that with whatever style, I'm okay with.
Okay. So
yeah, go ahead.
Let's hear from a Low Tone Capone. Great nickname. He says, Cats played hard. Devils did just enough. Give Fish another year. The 96th of the Territorial Cup will be a doozy. I'm going to say it's going to be a doozy for a couple different aspects. First and foremost, I don't think ASU is going to be very good next year. Now, I said that hopefully low because I'm in ASU territory right now. You could be looking at obviously a lot of turnover there, and you would certainly think that Arizona is going to improve to a certain extent. Let me ask you this, Anthony. Going into this offseason, then, if you're the overseer, if you're Jed Fish of the football program, what are the areas that you're looking to attack with this team, whether through the transfer portal, JUCOs, recruits? What are the key points that you're looking and saying, you know what we did this year just wasn't good enough?
I'm like retaining about 5 guys on offense and trying to recruit about 35 new ones.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest,
right.
First of all, Stanley's got another year potentially if he wants it. That'll be his biggest recruit if he can land that. There's some nice receivers. Obviously, Joyner having to play quarterback, being injured a large part of the year, he could certainly make a big jump and be a factor. Singer, where did he come from the last time?
Right, exactly, right.
You're dabbling in a few playmakers. You need just some flat out dudes.
Right.
Really, and again, they're deep at running back. I don't know why Stevie Rocker was so underused today.
Especially with all the hype that you heard about him. The coaches supposedly loved him.
Yeah, I mean, and I do too. I think everybody does. Why, in the time we've seen him.
Right.
So, I'd kind of like to get a little bit away of the running back rotation and maybe just try to find one or two guys who can carry the load there.
Right.
But, Dick told me would always go out and get like 2 stud JC receivers. I think you find those guys in the transfer portal now.
Right.
And you just need some playmakers. Right.
Now, all right, we got a couple questions here, and I wanted to ask you this because nobody in the press box was fully sure. Why was I'm drawing a blank on the name now, ejected?
Is that Singer?
Yeah. Well, what were we missing there? Because nobody saw it. I'm not saying he didn't do something, but was that evident on TV?
I don't think. I was kind of taken at the time. I don't think they ever showed it. They were busy showing replays of Michael Wiley's touchdown and if he got in. But I don't, unless I missed it, I did not see or they did not show what he did to get ejected.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't.
So strange. The whole game, of course, was filled with strange, often unique things, and that was one of them.
Okay, so and then let's see here. I think Alita and Andy Taylor put on here. They say we need to clean up the penalties and the turnovers. And yeah, I mean, that's you hear that age-old adage all the time. With good coaches, where they say the first thing that when you bring in a good coach is they stop beating themselves. Now, listen, I mean, especially when you're dealing with a talent deficiency, you've got enough problems all the way across the board to where you can't be giving up 30 yards in penalties. You can't be giving up offsides that go from a 4th and 5 to a 4th and 6 to a 4th and 1. That just can't really happen. So that's kind of where I look at that. What do you, as far as just what your expectations were going into the season, what would Anthony Gimino's grade be for this squad?
For the team, for the coaching staff?
Just, relative to expectations, yeah.
The most important thing to me was seeing how Jed Fish kept the team together through all the losing. We knew the losing was going to come.
Right.
They weren't in any stretch of the imagination ever going to have a great season, ever going to get to a bowl game. They just weren't that kind of team.
Right.
And they didn't have that kind of talent. So the test was always great. You rally some enthusiasm in the off season. People you may have changed some minds, may have converted some hearts, but what was the team going to do when they started to lose? By and large, I think he held the group together.
Right.
They still looked. I mean, they're down 3 scores in the 4th quarter. They're still playing pretty hard against ASU, trying to make something happen. So in that sense, that was the most important thing to me. I think he's a few weeks away from keeping the recruiting class together. That would be another huge, huge important thing. As far as the wins, really it should have been more than 1. Obviously, it should have at least been 2 with NAU.
Right.
And you were competitive. 1 score with 6 of your Pac-12 losses.
Right. I mean, you were in it.
So many, I can't even remember, but you sure should have beaten Washington.
Correct. You should have beat
Utah.
You should have beat Washington. You should have beat Utah. And I think that's improvement. And I don't want to, make it out like, you're basically, giving kudos to the 3-legged giraffe for finishing the race. But at the same time, though, and sorry if that's a weird comparison, but the one thing, though, that I look at with this team, though, is that they did battle. And I think coming on the heels of the Sumlin era, where basically in that ASU game last year, listen, ASU was better than Arizona, no doubt. They weren't 70-7 better than Arizona because they just weren't that.
The thing under Sumlin, maybe we go back to last year at Rich Rod, they would, you go back and look at their games. They're down
Right.
35-0 in the second quarter,
Right.
42-0 in the second quarter. There were several games like that where they
Mhm.
were just out of the ASU game was one of them. They're down 14-0 to ASU last year, and a full minute has not gone off the clock yet.
Right.
There weren't those games this year.
Mhm. There weren't. Yeah, exactly. And in games,
we're setting the bar super low, but I think he cleared that bar, made the competitive. If you're an Arizona fan, you may not like the 1-11 record, but I also don't think this team was embarrassed.
right, which is, I think, pretty much all that you're really going for at this point. Now, my other question would be, and the White Panda 10 right here, coming in with a lot of great points. He said, Anthony said, who are some of the guys that are should be at the top of the DC list? Now, this is far more your avenue than my avenue, where just some of the names that, they don't have to be accurate, but who are the kind of people that, who are the kind of people that Anthony Gimino would be looking at?
Well, he's talking about Chris Partridge there, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Who was with Don Brown at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
This was his first year at Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Ole Miss has done some nice things this year. Most of the attention's on Lane Kiffin and his offense. But that, just from a resume, he's young, 41, maybe looking to become his – he's only co-DC, I believe, at Ole Miss. Is that right, Mike?
Right. Correct. Yes.
So this would be a chance to run his own show. Again, he's 41 years old, familiar with Don Brown's style. Knowing Jed Fish, there may be a connection there somewhere. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But that name in particular makes a lot of sense to me. I know some of your buddies have thrown that one out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those are the kind of names that I think you're looking at.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you can get somebody of that caliber, that's certainly something that you're going to be more than okay with. Because I think the one thing that you saw with with this defense as opposed to the Marcel Yates teams, is that you didn't see the easy yards. And what I mean by the easy yards is you didn't give the 10 yards off of every single, wide receiver, all the free releases. You didn't really see that this way.
There were so many more tackles for loss this year. More press coverage, more stunts up front. And that's all Don Brown. That's in Don Brown's DNA.
Mm-hmm.
It did not translate to turnovers. And there's still huge criticism, but, the safety play wasn't good. A lot of times you get a lot of turnovers from your safeties.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys weren't great. They need an upgrade there. Linebackers were often hurt. But while the defensive front got more tackles for loss, more sacks, there were so very few of those stripping the quarterback of the ball kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Now you've seen, when Arizona football has been really, really good, whether that was it with the Desert Swarm, whether that was, heck, even with Rich Rod teams, where you had a Scooby Wright, that really impactful pass rusher. Do you have that guy on this? team? And if so, where do you go about getting that person? Because as we've seen, those are not easy, because generally those guys are claimed by pretty much other schools.
Yeah. And right now, when you start searching the West Coast for those guys, they're going to Clemson and Ohio State and Alabama and Texas and all those other schools. So you'd be able to find some of those guys somewhat under the radar, but you'd be able to find them within your recruiting footprint. But Cali's losing so many guys to other schools and other conferences that it's even getting harder. But the Desert Swarm guys just did it a different way. I mean, they were obviously all timers up front, but they could do it without crazy schemes. I mean, they would run their base defense 6 times in a row,
right?
And it was effective. Partly because the scheme itself was unique.
Mm-hmm.
The guys up front were so
the
good.
Double Eagle flex.
I mean, sometimes you see some revisionist history, and maybe younger guys, younger than you, Mike, but younger guys who talk about the Desert Storm era, and they think it was like this super aggressive, blitz happy group. Now they played their 4-man front, ran the same stuff pretty much every play, and they were just too good.
And it worked because you had a guy in the middle in Rob Waldrop that basically blew off, that blew up everything right there. And, that was something that was totally different that you haven't really seen before there. Now, Stanley Berryhill, the coach just said, is going to basically recruit and try to bring him back. And like you just said, Anthony, that's exactly what you want to do.
That's the number one guy. That's the number one recruit. So if you were ranking MVPs of Arizona season, I know you're looking for a quiet spot there.
Mm-hmm.
Go find Rivera. He didn't say much.
No, that is a good point, right?
So who would be your 3 MVPs of the season?
I think right now you would be, Stan Berryhill for sure. I think Stan Berryhill's pretty much a no-brainer. You would look at, because the people that I think going into the year that we thought would maybe be playmakers didn't turn out to be. I thought Michael Wiley was a guy that was going to have a nice, nice potential. He didn't really do much this year.
A nice game.
Yeah, he had a nice game, but when you start out on the Doak Walker award list, that's something that you probably expect a little bit more out of. On the defensive side of the ball, I thought Trayvon Mason was pretty good this year. On the defense,
good.
What's that?
Keon Bars was pretty good.
Keon Bars was pretty good as well. I would imagine that they'll probably get some honorable mention all-pack looks. But the guys that I think you really needed to emerge, you needed a Christian Roland Wallace or an Isaiah Rutherford or one of those DBs on the backside to really emerge. And that never really occurred.
No, never heard their names.
Yeah, and at first that's kind of cool, but then when you see that you're still giving up a lot of passing yards, maybe that's not cool.
Yeah, I thought both those guys were going to have some bigger years.
I did as well. And then if you're not getting great safety great corner play, it helps if you've got a safety back there or somebody in the Christian Young mindset that can make some plays. And that just never really happened there either, Anthony. This was just from Christian Young to I'm drawing a blank now on Jaden Young. Guys like that, you just never really had anybody that emerged as a playmaker.
No, there was really nobody on that back end that I'm not sure quarterbacks feared or really kept away from. So right. I think I would go Berryhill, Don Brown, Kyle Ostendorp.
Oh, I was going to say, if you want, I am more than okay with going with Kyle Ostendorp right there. And you know what? A lot of people say, well, that's, generally not what you want from the punter. But, at the same time, beggars can't be choosers in this regard. So, yes, he was a guy that I thought far outperformed expectations. Another thing that outperforms expectations, and you should have high ones to begin with, is the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Code word PHNX. Get on there. New customers only. Throw down $1 bet on any NFL game, and guess what? You end up getting $100 in free plays if either team scores. Guess what? Some team's going to score, and you can go with what you want. Heck, maybe you say to yourself, I liked Auburn to cover against Alabama today, and it ends up working.
They did.
And they did.
But they didn't get the W.
But they didn't get the dub, right? Exactly. So that's the kind of stuff that you can do at DraftKings Sportsbook app. All right. Yavapai Duke threw on here again. I think this is a guy that every couple years, there's always a guy that you hear and people say, oh, he's going to be big time for us, or this is going to be the guy that's going to take over. And a lot of times it just doesn't happen. Anthony Pandy's that guy. Not a bad player by any means. But, we've had multiple coaching staffs now talk about how they expected him to be kind of a difference maker. And Anthony, that's just never really quite developed. He just never has quite become that guy.
No, he's been good. He's been a Pac-12 level player.
Mm-hmm.
Was he a superstar? Is he going to get some all-conference honors? No, none of that. Another guy who had a nice game during the season.
Right.
He's been a really good player. Arizona's been fortunate to have him. Led the team in tackles, had some position flexibility that came in handy. But did he become a superstar? He didn't even get quite to the Colin Schooler, Tony Fields level.
Right. And, in all fairness, there's nothing totally wrong with that because Tony Fields went on to play in the NFL.
If you had a bunch of Anthony Pandys, that would be a better defense.
Yes. So let me ask.
Of 11 Anthony Pandies, but if you had a few of those mixed with a couple superstars, it'd be all right.
All right, let me ask you this. How far away is this team from being mediocre? 5 or 6 wins?
2023.
Okay, so what are you looking at next year? 3 or 4 win season?
3 to 4 wins and maybe 5 to 6, and then
you got your own guys and kind of see what goes from there.
Yeah, if you're good, and we really don't know, we don't know yet, right? We don't know how good Jed Fish is going to be in terms of the whole roster building and making guys better. We just know what he's done so far. Doesn't inform us as to what's still down the road if he can handle that. I would say year 4, you're looking at, okay, now we're thinking 7 or 8 wins, but I think you're looking at adding a couple wins every year.
This is the season 2. This is the season 2 that you're going to want to hop on to PHNX Sports, the AZ Wildcats podcast, because you've got a lot of really good stuff going on with Arizona athletics. And I got a few minutes left here, and I wanted to talk about something a little bit more pleasant with Anthony. I wanted to get Anthony on the post game against Michigan. But you know what? As Anthony said, he's got a real job, and you know what? He's got to get his sleep. I understand. Yes, I understand for sure. But I did want to get your take on what we've seen so far from the Tommy Lloyd era, because quite frankly, I mean, I'm not saying this team's going to win the championship, but this has been refreshing beyond belief, and it kind of reminds you of old times.
Super fun. You're going to keep breaking records on the podcast as Arizona basketball goes through this season.
No joke.
People are hungry for this, hungry for some winning, but they're also hungry for a fun, entertaining brand of basketball.
Mm-hmm. And that's what he's provided.
Absolutely.
You know what I've noticed too about it that's interesting is that when he talks about running, the one thing that they do is when they get the ball, they get the ball and they push it with the pass. Because guess what? As John Wooden said, you can cover more space with the pass than a run or than a dribble, and there's a pass or two, and they're already at the rim off of a rebound, off of an inbounds. Like I said, it's just something that we haven't seen really here since the heyday of Lute. Yeah, sure. I mean, Miller won some games, and that's great. Miller won a lot of games, and, he was very successful at times. But nobody ever said, man, that's exciting basketball to watch. So far with Tommy Lloyd, this is exciting basketball to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the case that when they were 22-0 or whatever that was when Brandon Ashley got hurt, mm-hmm. That was pretty fun. That was still fun, mm-hmm. But this is a little more exhilarating. Mm-hmm. And again, there's many ways to win in college basketball. Right. I know you hate the pack line and especially Virginia, mm-hmm. But they won. I mean, Sean Miller could have gone to multiple Final Fours.
Correct. Oh yeah,
in that style. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Not going to bash his style, but this is a lot more fun. And I like it's just not only stylistically, but in terms of the culture, because you can tell the guys are having fun.
Right.
And
exactly.
If the guys are having fun, there's going to be more success. Especially and I think when you get into the tournament games and, you're not feeling all of that pressure.
And let's talk a little bit, too, before we sign off about Christian Koloko, because honestly, I haven't seen anybody make this kind of jump in this quick of a time period that I can really remember. I mean, he's now showing up on NBA mock drafts in the top 10 to 15. And, it might be a little bit early, but you can certainly see where NBA teams have probably taken a real interest in Mr. Koloko.
Yeah, the biggest surprise is he's actually a go-to guy offensively. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought, okay, this is going to be a nice guy. He's going to provide some defense. He's going to clean up some stuff around the rim. I didn't think he would be like
he's a monster.
I mean, I'm not sure he's the first option, but he can be the first option.
Right.
You throw the ball down, and he's got a dribble and a move, and he can score. He's got that little hook now that you can't touch, and he's still doing all that other stuff. He's still cleaning up a bunch of stuff. I don't know if he can keep this pace up defensively, but he's going to smash your buddy Lauren Wood's block record.
I haven't seen really, and the problem that kind of stinks for Jordan Hill when he was here is that he was in that transition period between Loot, has to play for KO Penal, but everybody knew how good Jordan Hill was. It was just unfortunate for him that he didn't get to play for a vintage Arizona team to see what But Lauren Woods was really the last center that I think could impose like this. Channing was really good, but Channing was just a little bit of a different player. Now, again, he was far more, back to the basket here than he was in the NBA, which isn't saying a ton.
He didn't take 3-pointers here.
Yes, exactly. But, Lauren Woods, when I think of the dominant centers of that's the guy. And Christian Koloko, quite frankly, is reminded me a little bit of him just from his shot blocking prowess.
Yeah, he's got really good timing, good instincts. And, being 7'1" is a pretty good way to be.
And 7'1", a fluid 7'1".
Yeah,
I mean
this
he
part,
moves, right.
This whole style of offense suits him well too, because he's not a lumbering, he's when you talk about the NBA, and I didn't know some of the mocks have him so high already, but yeah, because he's the guy he's got length and athleticism. You don't necessarily need the very powerful down low bulk like you did way back when in the NBA. Mm-hmm. So I think he fits quite well.
Right, exactly. Anthony, I can't thank you enough for hopping on here. A little bit of a different situation here. You've been awesome for us for football, and that when Anthony Gimino comes on, he brings viewers with him. So as many basketball games as you can do, you're obviously welcome for all of those, AG.
All right, Mike. We will. You'll probably get me on some weekends. How about that?
I appreciate it. For Anthony Gimino, I'm Mike Luke. Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.